something like
the Chromebook challenge TeX as a web service, or
yes,
something like
that's it. Okay, so this is we know what this is, of course, don't we? Standard
bag.
Satchel of some kind.
Yeah, and do you know what this is?
Looks like a Chromebook.
Presumably it is a Chromebook, otherwise.
Yeah, that's right.
Or with the Python,
also known as
Raspberry Pi.
also known as poor man's MacBook Air, or plastic Mac. They're quite nice. I'll open it up. Something will happen.
You could just stick an apple on the back of it, just to conceive people are fooled.
I'll boot it up. Boots up quite nicely and quickly. These are quite interesting because Google selling them very much in US education, US schools.
Should we plug that in? Will it work with the as it's booting?
It doesn't need anything.
No, just want to see it on screen so we can see
this is not a talk about. This is a talk about hardware.
Okay.
We might need the screen. It's got a very nice screen. I won't do anything at the moment. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. I'll log in. Sign as an existing user. So it remembers your Google.
Oh, Jay. Hello.
Oh, hi Jay. Have a seat. That's free. Can you move over there?
Hello, Jay. I'll wait for you to sit yourself down.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Feels so there's a problem with this computer. There's a very good thing about it, which has got a very good security model. As I said, they're selling them to US schools, and they're now selling roughly on parity with Apple devices, Microsoft devices, and the Chromebook. They're approximately on parity. And in 5 or 10 years' time, we can see what will have happened, which is that Google is cutting off Microsoft's supply line. Just as an army needs porridge, Microsoft needs people to buy who are trained in Word and Excel and that sort of thing. So this is cutting off a Microsoft supply line, and it's changing things quite considerably. And they're quite easy devices to manage for the school because they're very secure. They've got a very nice security model. I won't talk much about that, except to say one thing, which is that you can't install software on it. That's a very important part of the security model. You can't install software on it, so you can't install a virus on it. You can install web apps. It runs the Chrome browser, and you can work offline. But as people, when they first came out, said, well, if all you want to do is connect to a web server, use the web, then it's fine. And it's quite good for watching YouTube. Very nice screen, very nice screen. They cost about, I bought this for £220, which isn't bad at all, particularly for the nice screen. It was on sale at John Lewis. Normally it's 270 or 290. You can get the smaller version, the netbook size ones, for about 160 or 170 at the very cheapest, I think. So they're very nice devices. They've got a solid state disk. They've got this one's got 4 gigabytes of RAM. Some of them have 2. If you're a geek, you can put it into developer mode, and then you can install your own version of Linux. I wouldn't have bought it if you couldn't. But if you're at school, you can't do that. The machine's locked down and remotely administered, and you can't even log into it. It's got a very good security model. And part of that security model is that everything is dealt with on the cloud. The cloud provides everything, and that's where the security is. The cloud is secure. That's, if you like, one of the premises.
I think there are a number of people who would actually challenge that, but fine, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think anybody would challenge that that's the premise of Google. So the problem is, to run tech, we've got to have tech on a web server somewhere. And we need to be connected to a web server. And it's got to run exactly what you want to run on in terms of web. So, how can we solve this problem? Well, we can get a web server and put it up on the cloud, etc., 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 or the security problems, etc., etc., or we can connect it to a web server. So, in my pocket, somewhere, I've got a web server. Not bad, eh? Now, we can put this Raspberry Pi, of course. Now, we put a wireless dongle on it, but that won't work, because this thing, even though it's got wireless, wants to talk to the internet. So we can't use the wireless dongle here and have it, we can't have this thing talking to the internet and to this Raspberry Pi, unless the Raspberry Pi is sort of acting as a gateway or something. That's really ugly. So we're going to have to use another technology, so we need another way of connecting the two. Well, this has got a very nice Ethernet port somewhere. Here it is. This doesn't. What do you need an Ethernet for on a Chromebook? It just clutters things up. So you're going to need something else. You need a dongle that gives you Ethernet. Right? Well, we're almost there. We'll need some cables, won't we? So this one. Thanks. This one. This is a USB 3 Ethernet dongle. It's got wireless at the end, and it's got so it's a hub as well. And I'll just plug it into the USB 3 port, which has probably got some power. Okay. So, oh look, green light. Excellent. So here's a Raspberry Pi. It will need some power, won't it? Anybody got any batteries or adapter? No? Never mind, we can use the USB. Here we go. Booting. Now, we're almost connected, aren't we? We need the network cable. Has anybody got one long enough? What we need is the world's shortest Ethernet cable. And here's my candidate. So this goes at this end. And this goes at that end. And we've got Ethernet connection. So the final thing is down to the SD card here. Right? As long as this SD card has got the right software on it, we've got a web service. This is now connected to a web server, running TeX as a web service. Nice stable environment, it's running the unit, you control everything, you've got all the resources you want, you can sort of do the Travis type sort of stuff, setting up this card, you don't have to worry about the user messing it up, all that sort of thing, and the person can do their time setting. And for what it's worth, you've got a nice browser here, which will display PDF for you. So you've got your DVI viewer here. You can save your work on the web, that's where you want to save it anyway. So the problem is we haven't got this set up yet, so that's the challenge. But now, if we take a different setting, which is, I'm thinking of somebody called Emma Cliff in Bath, who does a great deal of work with accessibility. And she wants to allow people to create accessible documents authored in TeX containing mathematics. Really, the TeX isn't important, it's the math that's important. So it's making accessible documents that ordinary people can use. And she produced a proof of concept thing by gathering together various bits and pieces that were on the TeX Live package and so forth. And the workflow was really ugly. And I think she had to reboot the machine as part, I can't remember. It was really quite ugly, quite difficult to install. And she wanted people actually testing it, caring about people with blind students, people who are teaching blind or visually disabled students. So it's not enough to just do a sort of laboratory test of the software, because really we're talking about the effectiveness of the software for helping the blind students. And so you've got people who've got PCs that they're used to, or that they're supplied by their company. There's this sort of limited environment, and we want them to run this software package, and Emma doesn't have the resources to set up a web server for this, plus all the security implications of that, because she's got to protect other people's data. Now with this thing, you don't have to protect other people's data, it just goes in the pocket and it's their responsibility. You don't have responsibility for the physical and other security of the web server. So for Emma, I thought what would be quite nice would be if we could set up an SD card like this that gave the tech installation that she wanted. And you just plug the dongle into an ordinary PC or a Mac or whatever, and the people can do their work. Now, some other people might say, oh, it's easier for me to set up a web server, and it might be in some cases, and it might be for others, it might not be for others. But if we take the web server approach, we can use this approach, we can use the real web server approach, and we can use the virtual machine approach running in the host PC. So, if you like, this is it the lowest common denominator? Yes. That allows it to work in a whole number of different situations, including this situation, where you can't install any software on the machine. Is there anything else? Oh yes, there is. Yes, this is actually a Raspberry Pi, which is used a lot in schools, and they have the same problem in schools of getting Raspberry Pis connected to the network, policies saying you can't put unsecure devices, problems updating the Raspberry Pi and so forth. But if you set the Raspberry Pi up as a USB dongle, providing a web service, then you might be able to do some interesting things. Now, there's a corollary from all this, which is all a little bit surprising, which is the software on here has to be updated. So how do you do it? Well, this thing actually isn't connected to the internet, even though it's a web server. But this thing is. So you can download an update. From the internet, you can download an update package. And then what you must do is you must upload it through the web interface to the web server. And when the web server reboots, it gets the update. So this is quite unusual in web servers. Normally you don't allow users to upload the new kernel image. But this is the only way in we've got, you see. So that's the challenge, and it does fit in well, I think, with the other talks we're going, because what we want to do is produce a standardized environment that's simple and easy to maintain and simple and easy to install. And this device costs, well, it's a high quality USB dongle, but it doesn't cost more than about 60 quid. This device I'm holding here doesn't cost more than about 60 quid. And it's useful for a lot of other things too. And you think how much time you spend doing a tech installation, this is a plausible route in many situations. And it doesn't have to be anything so clunky as this. It's the private web server approach to running software on devices like this without compromising their security. So I mentioned earlier that it's got a good security model. My data is on here, my private data. It's very interesting what happens if I lose this. Somebody else can restore the machine to factory settings and in the process wipe my data. The only way they can do that is wiping my data. It's like there's a sign saying, if you're a smart thief, please wipe the data off this, and you don't return it. If you find this and don't return it, please wipe the data on it. There's a reward for wiping the data. That's a wonderful security model. When I got it, the solid-state disk is soldered in place. That means that if you, somewhere, it recognises my Google password. My Google password is XXXXAABBB, and that is stored somewhere in this machine in encrypted form. You cannot boot this machine into developer mode or anything else like that without wiping the machine first. You can't boot it from a USB without wiping the machine first. And unless you're really very, very clever, you can't even take the SD card out, the solid-state disk, to upgrade and to hack into it with another computer. So the security model on this is really very nice. So these devices, I think, have got a lot of future. And that has a corollary that this sort of thing also has a future. Some sort of secure device, some sort of device that doesn't compromise security that you can attach to your machine to do computations. And one version of that is a public web server, and another version of that is your sort of private web server, and the third version of that is something you can put in your pocket. So I'm presenting this really as, or maybe it's not a good idea, or maybe it is a good idea, but it's indicative of a number of forces that we need to be thinking about. And Joseph in his talk said, one of the great things about TeX Live is you can do an unattended install. And that's quite similar to what we've got here. So what we want is to take all the trouble of installing TeX to be removed. That would be really good. If we can do it on this sort of device and on other devices, that would be very good. I've finished. Questions? Did you like the slides?
So I guess, Jonathan, eventually you'd envisage a single black box that just has a USB connection.
Yeah, if there's the demand for it.
Yeah.
If you just want the naked minimal part of that hub, just with a single hole which goes to the Pi.
Yeah.
And then put everything inside, and the rest is just cable.
Yeah, this is a black box, and this is a dongle, and you just plug
but
it.
you've got to put there. You've got a posh hub which bumps the price up. But if you had just the cheapest hub,
The Raspberry Pi costs £30. The hub costs £15.
yeah.
But it's USB 3 hub, which is something I wanted.
Yeah.
Oh, these things some of them at least have got USB 3, which is really nice because it's very quick.
Yeah.
If you put an SD card on a USB 3 connection, it's still very quick.
Yeah.
And it will support things like Gigabyte, Ethernet, and so forth. But we don't need it for the Raspberry Pi.
So that's just a B plus.
No, this is a 2.
Ah.
Okay.
I was going to say 30 quid, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry?
I was going to say 30 quid, they're a lot cheaper than that, but
Yeah.
yes.
No.
But yes, if it's a 2, then yeah.
And you can use it for other things. You can use it to make a goblin detector or a garage door opener.
That's a much nicer box than mine.
He
said.
This is what's.
Presumably you got that separately.
Yeah, I've got the box separately. I got it from
No, okay. Afterwards, I'll
PC World or something.
Afterwards, I'll take some notes.
Yeah, there you go.
So, I mean, I don't use it myself, but I would have thought more in the spirit of the Chromebook, in the way Google would do, rather than having another computer which could run tech. I mean, you could use, Overleaf or ShareLaTeX or some such existing online tech server.
Oh, absolutely.
It just seems odd sell to me to say, well, you bought your funky thin Chromebook, and then to use tech you have to buy another computer and plug it in. I mean, it's just saying basically. Except
that probably wouldn't work very well for Jonathan's use case of the visually disabled.
Well, yeah, I mean, for specialist devices, it's kind of a different world. But I mean, yeah.
Let's talk about Overleaf. Suppose you just want to. Suppose you're the developers of Overleaf, and you want to sort of put it out to some people. Well, you could go through the trouble of doing the whole setting up the website. I mean, I agree with you that in most cases a public web service is better than carrying a dongle like this. But if you don't have the public web service, or don't want to use the public web service, then this is a good way in.
Yeah. But you could. But I mean, if you're going to carry the Pi anyway, you could just put a keyboard on the Pi and do it there. I haven't yet seen the. I haven't yet seen the use case where you've got the Chromebook and needing to run tech on the Pi. I mean, you've the course and I'm running tech on the Pi. That's
the use case. The use case is the person has a Chromebook or a PC on which they can't install software. So a Chromebook is rare, but it's quite common that you have a PC on which you can't or won't install software. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that the service you want isn't available on the internet for some reason.
Yeah, but you could just put a keyboard. I don't see why you can't just put the keyboard. I mean, you've given talks on this.
Yes, I've done it. Put a keyboard
you
on a
could
Pi.
just put a keyboard on the Pi.
And there are much more elegant projects where you actually make a laptop.
You mean I just carry the Pi?
Yeah, on a keyboard.
And then
a screen.
And a screen?
Well, yeah, but you're just using the Chromebook as a keyboard and a screen for the Pi.
That's right. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Chromebook has other uses to go along with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think the argument though is if you did this as if it was a device you were making, it would be a lot. It would be you'd have Chromebook Plus probably like a USB stuff almost size, memory stick size. Eventually, you would aim to get that down really small.
YubiKey size.
So it would. So that then looks more convenient than carrying a keyboard and the screen and all that stuff.
If you're going down that route, if I work for the Open University, if they're doing a programming course, you can set up websites where people can do their stuff, give them a standardised environment, although there's some problems with that, or you can take this approach. So
Also works if you're outside Cappuccino Land anyway.
Yeah.
Like one of our tests we did this week on a different project, there's no Wi-Fi where we were, where he was, so he has to be completely self-contained. Now, he wasn't using tech in this case, but he still had to be self-contained out there because there's no cappuccinos anywhere nearby.
I think my point is something like this, that it may not be a particularly, it may or may not be a particularly strong and memorable use case in terms of the tech setting, but in terms of a goal, it's actually very useful. It's the sort of thing we want to be able to do with tech. We want to be able to make it very easy to set up tech to run as a web service. That's really the point, is that tech as a web service, even if all you're doing is taking in, well, in a modern setting, you will actually be using Git for your version control, won't you? So a tech service in a office setting where you're using Git for your version control, and whenever you do a commit, as in the Travis style, you get your PDF back, and you have a service somewhere that does that, and it's going to be a web service because it's probably running on a separate machine. That's a good thing to do. So setting up tech as a web service that runs with Git would be a really good thing to do.
You don't know of anything that already does that?
There might be.
Well, David's already mentioned there's Git integration for both Overleaf and ShareLated, I think.
Yeah, they already do that.
Yeah.
And so to a certain extent, I'm saying, yeah, you could use ShareLeaf, you could use Overleaf if you wanted to.
How up to date are they though?
I don't know.
What?
TLT 14, I think.
not too
No.
bad.
No, not too bad. They're running they're probably running run to LTS or something. So TLT 14.
The key point I'm making is not that you should go with this, but that you should go with tech as a web service.
That's just a nice way of giving you a portable one.
Yeah. It should even work. It should be even work on devices like this, a web service that works on things like this.
I'm trying to get my head around all the implications of what you're saying, and maybe I don't understand it. So I've come away with two conflicting views. One is that you're saying that particular hardware is good for the security reasons. In particular, you can't run software, or you can't install software.
Yeah. This has got some good points.
And then you've ended your talk, if I've understood it, that I'm going to take my input my .tech file with my personal information, and I'm going to send it to a US.
No, not necessarily US.
Well,
it's just a server.
A server, but somewhere.
It might be a corporate server.
Maybe on the desk.
Or it might be.
Oh, yeah, no, sure.
Yeah.
But I'm going to send it somewhere, which might be away from this table, out of this room.
Right.
Now, is that any better? So you're saying software in bad, but data out acceptable. And I spent 25 years doing classified work where the computers were networked in a room, and that was it. No connection whatsoever outside. So
you're making a very good point. I think I'm understanding
that would work fine for you because you could bring that in there, so long as the bouncers search you before you go out, before you leave the premises, then that's fine.
What was right? I've distracted it by saying my own background. You said that machine is good because you cannot install software, and hence malicious software. But so that's good. But you're opening the possibility of the user sending sensitive data out, whereas you're regarding that as good.
I think it all depends on use cases, or a lot depends
I
upon.
mean, if it's school children or undergraduates typing up theses, then okay. But
if it's
if I'm a law company and I'm typesetting this official document, I'm not going to want to send you out to
many servers there.
out of the room, am I? Or out of the company.
right.
So in the company, maybe, depending on security within the company. But
I think my point is.
you see what I'm getting at? Maybe
Yeah,
I'm expressing it wrongly.
Yeah.
Security applies to
Okay.
data as well as the software. Is really the essence of my point.
I think you're absolutely right about this, and quite how one deals with it depends upon the settings and the resources. What I am saying is that, okay, if we look at containers in Linux, they're really good because they isolate things, and that sort of improves security and reliability. And in a certain sense, I'm saying, well, let's containerize things. This is the secure device that you use to do your homework on and to connect to the internet and that sort of thing. And you can't install software on it for security reasons. This is the secure device that does tech and other things. And maybe you can or can't install software on it, but those two things are separated.
No, I understand.
Yeah. So from the security point of view, if the machine is a safe machine, you can't do anything bad by visiting a website. And plugging this in is having the machine visit a website. So I'm saying from a security point of view, there's something quite good there. But then there's the data issue.
Because you're using visiting a website to imply downloading information from a website, which you're and you've underwritten that as being a trusted website, which has already been pointed out is not necessarily true. But then in running tech, you have to supply your own data.
That's right, and there's a security implication.
There's implication there.
So from a security point of view, if you're really paranoid, you probably trust this device more than any web server.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Assuming you built it yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, not at the hardware level, but at the software level.
That's right, assuming you have a trusted image,
Yeah.
which is what this thing has. It has a trusted image. So from a security point of view, this is probably quite good. Except
And physically, I can't talk to the outside world.
No, I mean that's
right. The fact that this has got radio, doesn't have a dongle, Wi-Fi on it, is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean that would be okay. I mean, Thames House would accept that, I'm sure.
I've probably gone out now. 12 o'clock. Time for carving.